We continue our top 10 through baseball history. We do a top 10 for second baseman, 1969 to the present, 51 years. That's the divisional era, and it really focuses on a narrower talent pool of all-time great players. Bob Costas is with us. Bob, still some of the greats here, and it was fun to go through some of these guys. These are the speed guys. We're talking about the guys who had stole bases, the guys who were, the spark plugs, the instigators, and I also on a lot of great playoff teams.
Yeah, and in this case, number one is clear-cut as far as I'm concerned. Looking at your list, you too. Joe Morgan, in my mind, you can make a very strong case that he is the greatest second baseman in the second half of the 20th century. It's hard to compare the numbers when you bring in people like Rogers Hornsby from different eras, way, way back. But since 1950, I'd put Morgan at the top. And since 1969, he's my number one guy. Rod Carew, 7 batting titles. Carew's your guy, played first base, DH some too, but we have him as a second baseman. Roberto Alomar, number 3, outstanding at the plate, on the bases, and in the field. He was wonderful. Ryne Sandberg, steady, gold glove guy in the field, not spectacular, but almost unerring in the field. MVP in 1984, compiled big numbers in the Hall of Fame. Craig Biggio also in the Hall of Fame, very versatile, terrific speed. Started as a catcher, winds up as a second baseman, got there to the Hall of Fame as a second baseman. Jeff Kent, not exactly a gold glover, but the offensive numbers are overwhelming for a second baseman, even in his era, and we have to concede that he played in an era of offensive explosion. Jose Altuve still putting a resume together. Some people are skeptical about him because of the Astros situation, but he has won 3 batting titles. Lou Whitaker, we both have him at number 8. We both have Bobby Grich at number 9. And my 10th guy on the list, Chase Utley, and I regretted having to leave off Frank White, who was a terrific gold glove guy at second base, but didn't have enough offense. And Willie Randolph, who was a winning player, he just missed for me. Pedroia also was another one, but he got derailed before he could really build the numbers. He was on his way, but Dustin hit some bad luck.
Right. He looked like he was on a Hall of Fame track, no doubt. At the very top, Bob, you're absolutely right. And when we did this last year with Mad Dog Russo, and it was 100 years of baseball, you can't ignore, like, all the slugging titles for Rogers Hornsby, but it was a different position. I wanted to have Joe Morgan up at number 1. This time, here's my top 10. Joe Morgan easily number 1. Should be number 1 all time when you make a timeline adjustment. But Morgan, number 1. Yeah, Rod Carew, I'm glad, Bob, we both have him in at number 2. A closer look at Rod Carew. He was evaluated accurately in his time. He was famous because he had the high batting average, and that's what everyone loved, but a great all-around player, speed, on base, some power as well. I have Craig Biggio a little higher than you do at number 3. Chase Utley, I have a much higher. I'm at number 4. Utley, I'm more of a peak guy, Bob. I guess in this case I was anyway. For his peak, he's a 6-win player and a killer in the postseason. That guy was, as I often say, is a winner. Chase Utley was a winner. Roberto Alomar, also a great postseason player. I have him at number 5. I have no problem with you having him at number 3. That I could easily do that. Ryne Sandberg, then Robinson Cano. You don't have Cano. We'll get to that. But first, Cano, look, I'm giving him a knock because how long has he been on performance enhancers? I have no idea, but he keeps getting nicked. So I'm going to knock him back. If not for that, I'd probably have him higher. Then we have the Sabre Darlings for the Hall of Fame consideration. Lou Whitaker, Bobby Grich, and I did have room for Willie Randolph because I think Randolph is a Hall of Fame candidate. So I have Randolph off there. So let's start at the top. First of all, I just totally blew it. I should have had Kent in my top 10. I didn't. I have no excuse. I should have had it. So you can ding me on that. But you don't have Robinson Cano, and you did that on purpose?
Yeah, as I said at the start, the very first of these sessions we've had, PED use for the purposes of this is not a disqualifier, but it is a factor. So in some cases, it moved guys further down the list for me, and in this case, it moved him off the list.
But you had Barry Bonds, number 1 on your left field list.
Yeah, because he's Barry Bonds, and because he ever used PED, before he ever used PEDs, as best we can deduce, he was an all-time great player. Not an all-star player, not a Hall of Fame player, an all-time inner circle elite Hall of Famer before the PED use began credibly in the late 1990s. So Barry Bonds is Barry Bonds, and Robinson Cano is Robinson Cano.
And you had Clemens in there too. And now he was great. He was great when he was skinny, as I've mentioned before. But no, but Cano, all right, he wouldn't be beating Joe Morgan, but he'd be competing with Biggio and Alomar, wouldn't he? If you weren't taking PEDs into it.
Well, yeah, the second half of your sentence explains my position. Clemens
No, but
is
there's a
an
logical,
all-time.
there's an
Clemens is an
inconsistency
all-time great.
in that, right, you have Bonds, you have Clemens, you had Manny Ramirez on your top 10 too. I'm just saying, like Mad Dog Russo said, if there's a whiff of it, these guys are off. You're kind of yes, and then you're kind of
Yeah, that's
no.
him. No, actually, no. You have to be at the very top of the pyramid or close to it. Robinson Cano was putting together probably a Hall of Fame type career, but he's not an historic player. He's not, no one would say of him some equivalent to what you could say about Manny Ramirez, whatever his deficits are, that he was one of the greatest right-handed hitters of all time, or Barry Bonds, truly one of the greatest players of all time on his own merits, or Roger Clemens, multiple Cy Young Award winner, even before the alleged juicing. Cano is just not at his position in the same class as those players.
Okay. No, it's not. It's kind of this. I see it as the same issue, so we're just different on that. How are you on Jose Altuve? See, I wasn't quite ready for that with Altuve. I'm not going crazy on sign stealing, although when he had his bad regular season this year, you do start to wonder, hey, how much was the sign stealing helping you? Where are you on that?
Well, this year's only 60 games under unusual circumstances. I'm not trying to justify any of what we know and then suspect might have gone on with the Astros, but Altuve has been a very, very impressive player, and I lean toward a guy who's 5'7" or under. I lean toward Joe Morgan. If I could have figured out a way to put David Eckstein among my top shortstops and Fernando Vina among my top second baseman, I would have done it. I got a justification with Altuve, and I'm doing it.
Yeah. You have a personal bias. It's okay. At least you're copying to it. All right.
I do.
So we're fairly similar on
I
this
do.
one. Some big differences.